Right now, you probably have food stored in your kitchen, cans in the pantry, rice in the cupboard, pasta somewhere on the shelf, and it probably makes you feel prepared. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the food people store for emergencies won't actually help them when a real disruption happens. Not because they bought the wrong brands, not because they didn't buy enough, but because most foods only work under one condition. When everything is still mostly normal, electricity still works, water still runs, and you still have time to cook. But when those systems fail, the rules change instantly. The average household only has about 3 days of truly functional food. Not 3 days of calories, 3 days of food that can be opened, eaten, and turned into usable energy, with no electricity, no running water, and no preparation. Everything else becomes conditional. And conditional food is not the same thing as survival food, because when infrastructure breaks down, rice doesn't disappear, pasta doesn't vanish. But the moment the stove stops working and the water stops running, both of them suddenly become useless. So the real question isn't how much food you have. The real question is this: how much of it still works when everything else doesn't? These are the 12 canned foods that actually function in real emergency conditions. Not ranked by popularity, ranked by what still works when systems fail. And the food sitting at number 1 is something almost nobody stocks. 12. Canned soup. Most people see canned soup as the least serious item on any survival list. Too basic, too simple, too obvious. And that instinct makes sense. But it's also wrong, because after about 48 to 72 hours of disruption, something interesting happens to the human brain. It doesn't crash dramatically. It slows down quietly. Decision fatigue sets in. Simple tasks suddenly feel heavier than they should. Even something as basic as deciding what to eat can feel exhausting. And at that point, people don't skip meals because they ran out of food. They skip meals because preparing food feels like too much effort. That's the exact problem canned soup solves. Not because it's the most nutritious item on the list, but because it removes every step between you and a meal. Open it. Eat it. Done. But there is one critical detail people often get wrong. Condensed soup requires water, and in a water-restricted scenario, that extra step makes it unreliable. Ready-to-eat soup requires nothing, and when resources are limited, the difference between 1 step and 0 steps can determine whether you eat or not. Takeaway: only stock ready-to-eat soup, not condensed. 11. Canned chili. Here's a problem most survival lists ignore. Most canned foods only solve part of the nutrition equation. Beans give you carbs and protein. Vegetables give you micronutrients. But very few items provide a complete meal in one container. Canned chili is one of the rare exceptions. A single can typically contains protein from meat, complex carbs from beans, fat from the meat, and enough calories to actually sustain energy. Most cans provide 400 to 600 calories. 1 container, 1 complete meal, no preparation required. But the real advantage of chili isn't just nutrition, it's appetite. After a few days of eating repetitive, bland food, appetite starts to decline. And when appetite drops, caloric intake drops with it. Energy declines, focus declines, morale declines. Chili interrupts that pattern, because its flavor, texture, and complexity signal something important to the brain. This is a real meal. Takeaway: choose pull-tab cans so you don't need a can opener. 10. Canned beans. Most people think survival food is about total calories. Eat enough calories and you'll be fine. But that logic breaks down quickly during real disruptions. What actually matters is how long each meal keeps you functional, because every meal costs something: time, energy, mental effort. The fewer meals you need, the more resources you conserve. That's where canned beans become powerful. Beans combine complex carbohydrates, plant protein, fiber. This combination produces slow, steady energy release, which helps extend the time between meals, and over several days, that extension adds up significantly. People often compare canned beans to dried beans, and yes, dried beans are cheaper, but they require soaking water, fuel to cook. Under disrupted conditions, those requirements may not exist. Canned beans remove those barriers completely. Open the can. Eat. One more detail most people overlook: the liquid inside the can. Most people pour it away, but that liquid contains minerals and electrolytes released during processing. It's nutritional value that costs you nothing. Takeaway: rotate different types: black beans, chickpeas, lentils, kidney beans. Variety prevents food fatigue. 9. Canned chicken. Around day 3 or 4 of a disruption, something unusual happens. It isn't hunger. It's the absence of meat, not protein as a number, but the actual experience of eating meat, the texture, the chewing, the feeling of substance. Soft foods may provide calories, but they don't always satisfy the psychological expectation built into human eating behavior. And when that expectation isn't met, people start skipping meals. Canned chicken solves that problem. It provides real meat, without refrigeration, without cooking, without preparation. Nutritionally, it's also extremely valuable. One can often provide 40 to 50 grams of complete protein. During periods of stress and physical activity, the body begins breaking down muscle within days. Adequate protein slows that process. But canned chicken also acts as a multiplier. Add it to rice, add it to soup, add it to beans. Suddenly, every meal becomes more nutritionally dense. Takeaway: choose water-packed versions for better versatility. 8. Canned tuna. Most survival guides focus almost entirely on the body: calories, energy, hydration. But there's another system that matters just as much: the brain. Because during a disruption, the decisions you make determine survival more than calories alone, and brain performance depends on specific nutrients most canned foods lack. Canned tuna provides something extremely important: omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA and EPA. These are the fats your brain uses to maintain cell structure and communication. When stress is high and sleep is poor, cognitive performance declines quickly. Omega-3 intake helps stabilize brain function during those conditions. In simple terms, most canned foods support the body. Tuna supports the brain. Takeaway: choose tuna packed in water or olive oil for longer shelf stability. 7. Canned tomatoes. At first glance, canned tomatoes don't look like survival food. They're usually seen as an ingredient, something you cook with, not something you eat by itself. But during disruptions, ingredients that multiply other foods become extremely valuable, because tomatoes contain something many survival foods lack: acidity and flavor. After several days of eating bland foods like beans, rice, or canned meat, appetite begins to decline. Meals start to feel repetitive, and when food becomes monotonous, people naturally eat less, even if they still have plenty available. Tomatoes completely change that dynamic. A single can transform several different foods. Beans become chili, chicken becomes stew, rice becomes something closer to a real meal. But tomatoes also provide something nutritionally important: vitamin C. During longer disruptions, vitamin deficiencies begin appearing surprisingly fast. Tomatoes help slow that process. Takeaway: choose whole peeled or diced tomatoes, not just sauce. They're more versatile and can be used in multiple meals. 6. Canned fruit. Most survival lists focus almost entirely on protein and calories, but they ignore something equally important: psychological recovery. Stress levels during disruptions can remain elevated for days. Sleep becomes irregular. Appetite changes. Morale declines. Sweet foods help counter that effect, not because they're nutritionally essential, but because they stimulate dopamine release in the brain, and that small psychological reset matters more than people expect. Canned fruit provides that benefit while still offering real nutrients. It contains natural sugars for quick energy, hydration from fruit juices, and vitamins many canned foods lack. But there is another hidden advantage. In situations where water access becomes limited, fruit packed in juice provides additional hydration. Takeaway: choose fruit packed in juice, not heavy syrup. You get hydration without unnecessary sugar overload. 5. Canned corn. Corn might look simple, but it contains something extremely useful in emergency nutrition: dense carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the fastest fuel source the body can use, and during stressful situations, your body burns energy faster than normal. Corn provides that energy in a form that requires no preparation. But corn has another advantage. It pairs well with almost everything: beans, chicken, tuna, tomatoes. That flexibility allows you to create dozens of combinations from a limited food supply, which prevents one of the biggest problems during long disruptions: food fatigue. When meals become too repetitive, people unconsciously begin skipping them. Corn adds texture, sweetness, and variety. Takeaway: stock whole kernel corn, not creamed corn. It stores longer and mixes better with other foods. 4. Canned potatoes. Potatoes are one of the most efficient foods humans have ever cultivated. They provide carbohydrates, potassium, vitamin B6, fiber, all in one simple food. But fresh potatoes have one major weakness: they spoil. Canned potatoes remove that limitation completely. They retain most of the nutritional value while offering extremely long shelf life. But their biggest advantage is versatility. They can be eaten cold, mashed, added to soups, mixed with meat, or simply seasoned and eaten directly. During disruptions, foods that can serve multiple roles become incredibly valuable, because the fewer different foods you need to store, the simpler your system becomes. Takeaway: choose whole or sliced potatoes, not heavily seasoned versions. Neutral foods combine better with other items. 3. Canned salmon. Canned salmon may look similar to tuna, but nutritionally, it offers something different: higher omega-3 content and calcium. Many canned salmon products include the small edible bones, and while that might sound unpleasant, those bones are actually a major advantage. They provide bioavailable calcium, which becomes increasingly important during long-term food storage diets, because most shelf-stable foods contain very little calcium. But salmon also contains something else: healthy fats. Fat is the most calorie-dense macronutrient available. It provides more than double the calories per gram compared to carbohydrates or protein. And during extended disruptions, calorie efficiency becomes critical. Takeaway: choose wild-caught canned salmon with bones included. You get significantly more nutritional value per can. 2. Canned Spam or preserved meat. Most people either love it or hate it. Spam. But when it comes to survival food, it solves several problems simultaneously. First, it's extremely calorie-dense. One can provide a combination of protein, fat, salt, which together provide long-lasting energy. Second, it requires absolutely no preparation. It can be eaten straight from the can. Third, the high sodium content actually becomes beneficial during stressful conditions. When the body sweats more and eats irregularly, electrolyte balance becomes harder to maintain. Salt helps stabilize that. But there's another reason preserved meats rank this high: satiety. Fat and protein together keep you full much longer than carbohydrates alone, which reduces how often you need to eat. Takeaway: rotate preserved meats like Spam, corned beef, canned ham. Variety keeps meals from becoming monotonous. 1. Sardines. The number one canned survival food is something many people completely overlook: sardines. They may not be the most popular food, but nutritionally, they're one of the most powerful foods you can store. A single small can provides high-quality protein, omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, vitamin D, healthy fats, Few foods provide that many nutrients in such a compact form, but sardines also have another survival advantage. They're incredibly efficient. Small cans, high calories, high nutrients, minimal storage space. That efficiency becomes extremely important when storage space is limited. But there's one more reason sardines rank at the top. They're already fully cooked and preserved in oil, which adds additional calories and improves shelf life. In a real emergency pantry, foods that combine maximum nutrition with minimum preparation are the most valuable, and sardines deliver exactly that. Takeaway: choose sardines packed in olive oil for extra calories and longer shelf stability. Most people think emergency food storage is about quantity, more cans, more supplies, more shelves, but real preparedness is about functionality, food that still works when systems fail, because when the power goes out, water stops running, and stores close. The food that matters most isn't the food you bought. It's the food you can actually use. If you're building a serious emergency pantry, start with the foods on this list. And if you want to go one step further, in the next video we'll break down the 10 survival foods that last over 25 years, and the ones that secretly expire much faster than people think.